Everybody, we are live. Okay, let's okay, we are live. Just gonna give people a couple of minutes to come in the room. Today we are going to be talking about love and marriage. Hello. We're going to be talking about love and marriage. Welcome, everybody. Okay, wonderful. Hello, Dr. Irene. Hello, Dr. Yams. So today we're going to be talking about love and marriage. If you're joining me live on Instagram, you are welcome. If you're joining me live on YouTube, you are welcome. Hi, ladies. So now would be a very good time to call your sisters, call your friends, call your aunties, call your cousins. This is going to be a really good one. Dr. Yam says, let's get the candles burning and the lights dim. Absolutely. I have my candles here. Absolutely. Now would be a good time to go ahead and share with your friends, your besties, the ones that low key are always complaining about their love life, or the ones that may not be complaining about their love life but still want to do better. So now would be a good time to go ahead and share this slide. We're going to be talking about the most practical. This is the most practical book I have read on marriage and on love. It's the most practical book I have read on marriage and love. And honestly, it's one that I'm going to be recommending time and time again because of the nature of my practice. If this is the first time we're connecting, I'm Dr. Yewande. I'm a medical doctor, and my practice is focused on mental health. And I see primarily women, although I do have a handful of men in my practice who are high functioning, ambitious, successful, and struggle sometimes with depression, anxiety, burnout, overwhelm. And my role is to give them the tools that they need to overcome these mental health challenges so that they can be the best version of themselves personally and professionally. Now, why am I talking about a book on marriage today? Why am I talking about a book on marriage today? I'm talking about a book on marriage today because there isn't a week that goes by. In fact, I probably don't go one day without having a conversation on marriage and relationships in my practice. And I'm not exaggerating. Today, I definitely had a conversation on marriage and relationships, and I definitely recommended this book to the woman that I spoke to earlier today. And it's one, like I said, I'm going to be recommending time and time again. So, we're going to be talking about this book. This book is newly released. I don't think it's been up to a month that it's been out on the market. And it's written by a couple who I have followed for some time for marriage tips, relationship tips, and they've been doing this work on marriage and relationships for about 15 years. And they've written books before. This is not the first book that they have written. They have written books before, but this one, and I've read many books on relationships. As you can see, I have a shelf. These aren't all my books, a shelf full of books because I'm always learning, always growing in order to help my clients the best. I also have to be up to date with knowledge. But this one is one I've already read it almost. So I've read it once and I'm already halfway through reading it again. And I've only had it for about a week and a half because it's been that good. So thank you very much. The name of the book is The Marriage Habit. The Marriage Habit. Auntie Kwasi. Hi, Kwasi. Good to see you. Welcome, everyone that's joining. Welcome, welcome. The name of the book is The Marriage Habit. That's the book that we're going to be talking about today. If you haven't read it, no problem at all. I'm going to be going through the main themes. I'm going to be going through the highlights, and I'm hoping that by the end of today, even if you don't decide to pick up the book, at least you would have one or two things that you're going to go away with that you can apply on a practical basis. Awesome. So we're going to be talking about the marriage habit. And like I said, the reason why I'm not a marriage counselor, I'm not a marriage expert, but I love human psychology, I love human behavior, and the things that are important to my clients are the things that are also important to me. Of course, I'm married. I've been married for 12 years. And so anything that will also help me in my personal life too is something that obviously is a win for me. And so the marriage habit, we're going to talk about the marriage habit. Now, before we start, I would love to know, do you have any questions? What questions are you hoping to have answered today? What questions are you hoping to have answered today? Hello, Rahila. What questions about relationships? What questions about marriage are you hoping to have answered by the end of our session today? Like I said, we're going to be discussing the topics of this book. I know I'm hyping up the book, but Trust me, it's going to be worth your while. We're going to be talking about the topics from this book, The Marriage Habit 10 Simple Practices to Build a More Intentional, Thriving Relationship. And it's by a couple called Casey and Megan Kasten. So, as you put your questions in the chat, the first thing that I want to say about this book is that, like I said, there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of books that have been written on relationships and marriage. So many books have been written, so many workbooks, so many textbooks. We have couples counselors, we have marriage counselors, we have retreats, we have workshops, and all the things that have been put into helping couples and helping marriages thrive. And all those things are well and good. But the premise of this book is that, yes, therapy is great. Of course, I'm a therapist. I'm a mental health therapist. I offer psychotherapy in my practice. And so therapy is great. Hello, Daddy Angela. Of course, therapy is great, but this book brings it to a very practical level. It brings it down to a very practical level, because many times we try to read these books, and yes, we get the knowledge, we get the information, but we don't really understand how to translate it into practical application. And for me, the way my mind works, if it's not practical, okay, yeah, this is nice to know, but how do we put it into day-to-day living? So this book is super practical. It's something that you can literally start using tonight if you choose to. No matter where you are, you can take something from this book and implement it tonight. And within a couple of days, you will see a difference in your relationships and a difference in your marriage. And so this is why I have really appreciated and loved this book so much. So the premise of this book is, yes, therapy is good. Yes, talking it out is good. Of course, many of us know that our past traumas, our childhood often will come out in how we deal in our marriages and our relationships. And it's good to address those things. Of course, it's very important to address those things. But beyond that, and in addition to that, what are the practical things that we can do on a day-to-day basis to improve our marriage? And that's where we are going to today. So the first thing that I want to say, just like I said, one of the things that they say in this book is that marriage advice needs to be practical and tactical, not just inspirational. You don't want to go to a marriage conference and feel good and warm and fuzzy inside, and then by the time you get home, the two of you are still sleeping in separate bedrooms, or the two of you are still acting like roommates or teammates, and there's no fire, there's no spark. It's just, boring and just dry, right? Or there's that distancing or that separation that's happening. So they're saying that, yes, it's important to go for these conferences and these retreats and these workshops, but at the end of the day, what are the tangible things that we can do? And they break it down into 10 very simple habits that you can do. Now, they're not recommending that you need to do all these habits at once, but even if you take one or two and start with those, it can go a long way. The nice thing about the book is that it arranges the habits from easiest to hardest. So you can start from the beginning, the first habit, there are 10 of them, like I said, and work your way through to the rest. Or they acknowledge that some of these habits might be easier for you to do. Even though they are arranged in a certain way, you might find that number 7 is easier for you to do than number 1. And that's totally okay too. Of course, I'm going to go through the different habits so you really understand what it's all about. And then by the end of today, I want you to pick one habit that you're going to implement in your own marriage. Okay. And I also want to hear feedback on how it's going. So they say most couples don't need more therapy. They just need better tools. Most couples don't need more therapy. They need better tools. Are they saying therapy is bad? No, they're not saying therapy is bad. What they're saying is that people need the tangibles, the tools, the skills in order to go from feeling frustrated in their marriages, feeling unseen, unheard, to actually feeling connected and feeling like they are thriving in their marriages. So let us get into the 10 habits. Let us get into the 10 habits. Actually, before we get into the 10 habits, I'm going to emphasize, because many times when I see women in my practice, they feel frustrated because they feel like their husbands are the problem. They feel like, oh, and I'm only speaking because I see primarily women. I'm sure that if somebody was to talk to men, they might say the same thing, that most times we feel as if our spouse is the problem and they're the ones that need help. But the premise of the book here is saying that in order to get a better marriage, if you want to have a better marriage, you have to start with a better you. And that's the first kind of wake up call, that if you actually want to have a better marriage, you need to start with a better you. And that's the whole premise of the book. In that, at the end of the day, you might come to your counselor and say, oh, my husband is this, my husband is that, or my wife is this, and my wife is that. But the whole idea is we're going to turn it back on you and say, okay, your husband isn't here, or your wife, for me, I'm often saying your husband isn't here. The only person that's here in my office is you. And so why don't we work on you? Why don't we work on the things that you need to work on? Because at the end of the day, it takes two to make a marriage work, right? And so in order to have a better marriage, you need to start with a better you. And they also emphasize that, yes, it's ideal for the two of you to be on this journey of making your marriage better. However, it is very possible. It is very possible for you to improve your marriage if you are willing to be the only one doing the work, at least at first. Okay, and that might be a bit of a shock for many of us, because many times we believe that, oh, okay, if he's not working on himself or if she's not working on herself, then it's not likely that the marriage is going to get better, and so I'm not going to bother trying. But the truth of the matter is that even if one person starts to implement some of these habits, it can go a long way in improving the marriage. And this is something that has been proven time and time again. And I'm going to explain why. Again, like I said, many times we believe that, oh, if he's not willing to change or if she's not willing to change, what's the point of me trying? But the truth is, once again, if one person is willing to do the hard work initially of making the changes, it can go a long way in bringing the other person on board eventually. Now, I need to put a very big disclaimer here, and it's very important to say this, in that this book is not meant for people who fall under the category of what we call the 4 A's, or what the book calls the 4 A's, right? So this book is not for people who fall into the category of what we call the 4 A's, right? And the 4 A's being abuse, number one. Number two, addiction. Okay. Number three, affairs. And number four, abandonment. And I'm going to say those 4 A's again. Number one, abuse. And that could be physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, so any form of abuse. So number one, abuse. Number two, addiction. Number three, affairs. And number four, abandonment. So if the relationship has challenges in any of these 4 areas, then the tips in this book, they may help, but they're not going to solve the problem. Those 4 A's that were mentioned require real professional help. Okay, they require real professional help. They require, especially in the case of abuse, a safety plan. They require interventions, professional intervention. So a book is not going to solve addiction issues. It's not going to solve abandonment issues. It's not going to solve issues of affairs and betrayal. It's also not going to solve issues of abuse. Okay, so that's a very big disclaimer that needs to be put right off the bat. Now, have there been case studies where people who have been in affairs or betrayed and have gone through this process and it has helped them? Yes, there have been. There have been, but just from, a generalization point of view, it's important to note that those kinds of situations do need special attention. So, but for the majority of us, who, when people talk about divorce, the number one cause for divorce is what they call irreconcilable differences, right? Irreconcilable differences are not is not abuse. Irreconcilable differences is not addiction. Irreconcilable differences is not affairs usually. Irreconcilable difference is not issue of abandonment. It's usually these little foxes, as we say, the little foxes that spoil the vine, right? Those little things that happen over time, that creep in over time. And that's where the majority of us find ourselves in our relationships, is that it's not any of these four A's, but over time, we've just realized that the spark is gone, right? We've realized that the connection is gone. We've realized that things are not the way that they're not the way they were when we were younger, when we were happy, when we were excited. And that's what this book is addressing. Okay, again, the Marriage Habits: 10 Simple Practices to Build a More Intentional, Thriving Relationship. That's what we're talking about today. Now, the tips in this book are really simple. They are really, really simple. The habits discussed here are really simple. But I want to say that what I've realized and come to know is that simple does not mean easy. Simple does not mean easy. In fact, simple things can be very hard. They say apologize to your spouse. Very simple, but not easy, right? So I just want to caveat also everything that we're saying, and that this is very simple, but to actually get yourself to do it can be a challenge. But once again, it's worth it. It's worth the challenge. It's worth the fight, especially if we're talking about our marriages. Many of us married because we loved the person that we got married to, and we saw a future with them, and we want to grow old with them. But somewhere along the lines, things started to fall apart. Things started to disintegrate. And this book is going to help fix that. Okay, so let's get into some more gut-wrenching truths. The first thing I said was that in order to make a better marriage, you have to make a better you. And so it starts with you at the end of the day. You are the only thing that you can control in your relationship. You cannot control your spouse. You are the only person that you can control in your relationship. Now, the second gut-wrenching truth is that it's not your spouse's job to make you happy. I say this many times in my practice. It's not your spouse's job to make you happy. It's your job to make you happy. It's your job to make you happy. How is that landing for you? How is that landing for you? How is that landing for you? It's not your spouse's job to make you happy. It's your job to make you happy. Now, your marriage is not supposed to make you miserable. Let's just get that out of the way. Your marriage is not supposed to make you miserable, but it's not your spouse's job. It's not their responsibility to make you happy, to manufacture your happiness, to orchestrate your happiness. That is on you. And so it goes back to what I had said earlier, in that if you're not happy in your marriage, stop waiting for your spouse to fix it. Get up and do something about it. And you'll find that along the way that they'll start to get on board. Something will start to soften in you, and something will start to soften in them to also help improve the relationship. Okay. Comparison, they speak on comparison as well, that many times we compare our partners, our spouses, to what we see on TV, what we see on social media. But one of the things that they talk about is gratitude, focusing on what you do have instead of what you don't have, and that going a long way to help your relationship. Now, once again, this does not apply in the case of abuse. It does not apply in the case of abandonment, in the case of affairs, in the case of addiction. But in those situations where we've noticed that there has been a distancing in our relationships, things just aren't the way that they used to, and we're looking for tips and strategies, practical strategies to work on, this is the book for you. This is the book for you. So let's get into the 10 habits, what you came here for. Let's get into the 10 habits. This is an easy book to read. I highly recommend it. It's available on Audible. If you have Spotify Premium, it's also available on Spotify Premium. And so the book is divided into the introduction, part one, what nobody told you about marriage, and then the 10 habits, which I'm going to go through now. And then finally, part three, how to save your marriage by yourself. So there is actually a part that talks about how to save your marriage by yourself. So for those of us whose partners, husbands, wives, spouses are not yet on board, there's actually a chapter that will walk you through what you can do on how to save your marriage by yourself. Okay, so let's talk about the 10 habits. Let's talk about the 10 habits. I'm going to read through all of them, and then I'm just going to give quick summaries on all of them. And I want you to just take note on the ones that you feel you are willing to try, the ones that you feel will be doable, and maybe the ones that might feel a bit hard for you. Because what you can then do is decide which ones you're going to try first from easiest to hardest. Like I said, the authors actually ordered the tips, the habits from easiest to hardest, but what's easy for them may not be easy for you, and what's easy for the couples that they have seen may not be easy for you. So think about the habits and try to figure out which ones will be easy for you to do and which ones you might want to do later on. So the first habit is the known position. The known position. Now, what is the known position? One of the things that they emphasize in the book is the idea of connection, right? Many of us, the reason why we're having challenges in our marriages, and you'll hear a lot of women say this, is that I don't feel emotionally connected to my husband anymore. It just feels like we're partners, we're just running the house, we're just taking care of the kids, but there's no emotional connection anymore. So, this first habit, also known as a known position. So, known is actually an acronym for sitting down and having conversations. Maybe not necessarily deep conversations, but just sitting down and connecting face to face with your spouse. So what does known stand for? K. So it's actually a sitting position. It's actually a sitting position where you have a chair, your spouse has a chair, and you're sitting down face to face. And having that connection goes a long way. So let me talk about the known, KNON. So KNON, it stands, each letter stands for something. K stands for me to me. So you're sitting me to me. So you're sitting across from each other, not beside each other, not one person on one couch, another person on another couch, but you're sitting me to me. No distractions, meaning no phone, no TV, no kids, right? They even say that if you're going to have music playing in the background, it should be like spa music or classical music, nothing that's going to distract you from one another, because remember, the goal here is to connect with one another. Open body language, meaning no crossing of your arms, no crossing of your legs, right? Because that indicates a lack of interest, right? Or just you're not open, right? So if you're closed off with your body language, whether it's crossing our legs as ladies or crossing our arms, right? That can indicate to the other person you're trying to connect with that you're not interested, that you're not present. The W is your whole self, meaning be present, be engaged. Don't be in the moment. Don't be physically present, but your mind is somewhere else. And then nurturing eye contact. So looking at each other eye to eye, right? So knee to knee, no distractions, open body language, bring your whole self to the conversation, and nurturing eye to eye contact. Okay. Now, they acknowledge that if you have been in a relationship where things have been awkward and tense for a long time, this known position, sitting in front of each other and making eye contact, might feel very awkward. So maybe you want to start with open body language and talking with no distractions. And then over time, building up to the knee to knee, bringing your whole self, and then eye contact. Now, research has shown that when you make eye contact with someone, it does something to the brain chemistry where there is a oneness. There's actually a synchronization of the brain waves that happens where the brain waves start to move in sync, in unison. So if I sit in front of someone and I'm making eye contact with them, there is a synchronization of the brain waves that actually happens with that eye to eye contact. And this is why when you sit down and look someone in the eye, it can feel very uncomfortable because you feel vulnerable, you feel exposed. But that's exactly what we want in our marriages, is to feel exposed, is to feel vulnerable, is to feel seen. One of the greatest needs of human beings is for us to be seen. We just want to be seen, especially by the person who we've chosen as our life partner. So that eye to eye contact, openness, body language to say, I'm here for you, nothing else is more important than you in this moment, can go a very long way. So that's the first habit, is doing that. I think they actually suggest at least once a week. They suggest at least once a week where you sit down and you have that connection time in the known position. So KNON. So that's the first habit. What do you think about that first habit? Does it feel doable or does it feel hard? To me, that one feels a little bit hard, if I'm being honest. I'll share with you the ones that we have practiced as a couple in my marriage over the years, because like I said, this couple, even though it's a new book, it's a couple that I followed for some time, and we have used their tips over the years to very good effect. um, but this particular one, I don't know, it feels a little bit hard for me, but I would love to hear what other people have to say about that first habit. While I wait for your responses, let's go on to habit number two. Habit number two. Habit number two is what they call the weekly marriage business meeting. The weekly marriage business meeting. And this is one that we have actually implemented in our home. We don't call it a business meeting, but we do many of the things that they recommend that you do in a business meeting. So many of you would have heard me talk about our couch time, where we meet at 8:30 on Wednesdays on our couch at home, and we have conversations. We talk about our week, we talk about work, we talk about time, time with the kids. We talk about how the kids are doing, maybe something that one child said or one. And so we actually just spend an hour. We do an hour. We spend an hour talking about our time. Hi, Fumi B. How are you? We spend an hour talking about our week. What was the hardest part of the week? What is the best part of the week? What felt challenging? What felt and then where do you need my support? So we ask questions like that during the course of our time together. So like I said, we don't call it a marriage business meeting because sometimes we have music going, sometimes we have snacks, sometimes we just like to we spend time together, basically intentional time together, and we also bring some of these strategic things into it. Now you're going to see that they actually recommend that you separate the business of marriage from the fun of marriage, but again, we all have to start somewhere. So if that time, this marriage business meeting, this weekly meeting that you have, you can incorporate some fun into it, that would be good. But you just want to set out a specific time every week to be able to meet and talk about, just what's on your mind. So that way, that, of course, this is not the only time that you're going to have conversations with your spouse, but at least it's a start. Now, one of the statistics that they shared in the book is that the average couple spends less than 35 minutes a week connecting. The average couple spends less than 35 minutes, that's half an hour, over the course of 7 days connecting. And when I read that statistic, honestly, it wasn't shocking because the truth of the matter is between kids, between work, schedules, many of us have side businesses that we're running, we're in courses, we're taking programs. There, our marriages end up going on the back burner, unfortunately, right? Not because anyone is doing it intentionally, but that's just the way it happens, unfortunately, right? And so those 35 minutes over the course of the week is not enough. It's not enough time. And so when we know that every week we have on the calendar at least an hour where we are connecting, doesn't mean that you're not going to connect on other levels, but it goes a long way. It goes a long way. Pussy says it is doable. I like the ends. Yes, the ends are nice too. No distraction and the eye contact, right? Nurturing eye contact. Yeah. So the business meetings, they recommend a couple of things that you discuss your schedules, you discuss your budgets, you discuss your self-care, you discuss your meal plans, meals for the week, you discuss your connection time. And because I don't know if there are kids around, I'm not going to go into, by the way, this is not a book that you want to listen in the car with your children because it does get quite, it's definitely, I won't say it's R rated. It's probably like PG. Is there PG 16? Or PG 18? I don't know. But it's one that you definitely want to have your headphones on as you're listening to it because it does get into details. It's a book for grown men and women, and it does discuss grown men and women things. And so it even talks about scheduling your intimacy, right? Your intimacy time. Let's just put it that way. And so these are the kinds of things that you want to be discussing at your weekly marriage business meeting. And for us, it has done wonders. Just knowing that we have that hour every week to be able to discuss and plan and catch up and check in with one another in the midst of a very busy schedule, it's definitely gone a long way. So that's habit number 2, which is the weekly marriage business meeting. That one is one that we definitely do and recommend. So is that one feeling doable? I'd love to hear. Is that one feeling doable? While I wait for your responses, let's move on to habit number 3. Now, this is one that I would like for us to try next, and it's the love list. Habit number 3 is having a love list. So what this looks like is you writing all the specific things that make you feel loved, right? Many of us know about our love languages, but the truth of the matter is if somebody says their love language is physical touch, like what exactly does that mean? So this actually takes this to the next level in that you actually write down, it's like having a wish list. You actually write down the things that specifically make you feel loved. And your spouse also writes down the things that specifically makes him feel loved. And you exchange lists. So you exchange your love list. So that way, once a week, each of you can pick and say, okay, I really want to make my husband feel loved today. I really want to make my wife feel loved today. Let me pick something from their list and give them a gesture. Now, of course, it's important for you not to be vague. It's important for you to be specific. So the example that they gave here is that instead of saying be more romantic, I want you to be more romantic. Well, what exactly does romantic mean? Like, what does that even mean? You can say something like, I want you to text me during the day to say you're thinking about me. Yeah. I want you to text me during the day to say you're thinking about me. So that's more specific. And so you would write a list of all the things that make you feel loved. Your spouse would also write all the things that would make him feel loved. And you exchange lists. And over the course of the week, you pick from the list and offer each other a gesture. The nice thing is that they actually give a really nice list of examples. So if you like words of affirmation, if you like action, if you like deep connection, if you like physical touch, if you like gifts, if you like experiences, they actually give examples of the kinds of things that you can put onto your list if you're feeling stuck as to what to do. Okay. So examples are, tell me you're proud of me when I accomplish something. Tell me you appreciate how hard I work for the family. Tell me I love you while we're in the car. You see how specific those are? If you if you love to be touched, hold my hand when we're walking together or watching TV. Pull me close and cuddle me in bed. Those are some examples of what can go on your love list if you like physical touch. If you like gifts, surprise me with my favorite beverage. You see, it's nothing over the top. It's not like buy me a new car or buy me a new designer bag. Um, Pick out something special that makes you think of me when you're at a store. So those are just some specific examples, and they have a page or two of lists that can go on your love list. So that is habit number 3. That is habit number 3. Again, you can see how practical these things are, but these are the sorts of things that go a very long way. All right. Before I go on to habit number 4, I see there is a question. So Faisal says, weekly business meeting, does it feel natural or it becomes more formal? So all of these things, I'll be very honest with you, at the beginning, they can feel very awkward. Just putting it out there. At the beginning, it can feel very uncomfortable and very awkward. But I always like to say that whenever you are learning a new skill, like say you're learning how to drive or you're learning how to speak a new language, it's always going to feel awkward and uncomfortable. You're going to embarrass yourself. You're going to trip over your words. You're going to burst out laughing inappropriately. It's going to feel awkward at first. But over time, just like with any skill, if you stick it out and you continue practicing, it's going to start to become more natural. It's going to start to become more natural. And they also raise a very good point in that many times we think that love needs to be spontaneous in order to feel romantic, that we need to just go with the flow. The problem is that when we go with the flow never flows. It never happens, right? There is no flow at the end of the day, right? So, yes, it might look a bit formal structuring these things, but this is how it's going to happen. Otherwise, it's never going to happen, right? So at the beginning, it's going to feel awkward, it's going to feel uncomfortable. So expect that. But over time, as you get used to it, as you get to the flow, it starts to feel more natural. And remember, the business meeting ideally is supposed to be separate from your fun time, which we're going to get to. But at the end of the day, these are the things that it's the intentionality. It takes intentionality. We can't leave it up to chance. We can't leave it up to the flow. Otherwise, it's never going to happen. Okay. Right. Now, one thing that they even talk about is the idea of scheduling intimacy, right? Just to keep it clean, because I don't know if your kids are around. So the idea of scheduling intimacy time, right? Many people push back to say that, oh, it's supposed to be spontaneous. But many times it doesn't happen if you leave it up to chance, right? Many times it doesn't happen if you leave it up to chance. And the whole idea is to get that time in because no one is going to complain whether it's scheduled or not. The idea is to actually get that time in, that intimacy time in. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen, right? So they recommend trying it, just trying to put those things on the calendar, trying to schedule it out and seeing if it helps or not. Most times it's actually going to be more helpful. All right. Okay, I'm glad that that's helpful. Let's move on to habit number 4. Now, this was one that we really ran with. We don't do it as often now, but it's something that we're trying to bring back into our daily habits, and it's called the 60-second blessing. The 60-second blessing. I remember when we first tried this particular habit, probably about 2 years ago. Within a few days, it made it made a world of difference. I remember that there'll be times when I would actually be at home wishing that my husband would be home, like wishing that, oh, I can't wait for him to get home, which before that thoughts like that would never cross my mind. But actually being like, well, I can't wait for him to get home. I'm so excited to see him, all because we started to do this particular habit. And it's called the 60-second blessing. What is a 60-second blessing? It's simple. It's simple, very simple, where each of you takes 1 minute to affirm each other, to give each other compliments. Now, like I said at the beginning, you may be in a situation where your spouse is not ready to implement any of these things, and so you will have to do the hard work of starting first. Okay, I'm just saying that's just what it is. So if you are in a situation where the two of you can work on this together, that's fine. But if not, give it a shot. In fact, last week I challenged one of my clients and I said, I want you to start giving your husband a 60-second blessing and do it for 7 days straight. And if you miss one day, you start again. That's what I told her. And so, what it is that you give your spouse compliments, genuine, honest feedback, positive feedback, compliments for 1 minute. And that's it. 1 minute, 1 minute a day, 1 minute a day. And some of you might be in situations where you're like, I can't even think of anything positive to say about my spouse. Well, the challenge here is that you're going to now force your brain to find something, force your brain to pay attention. There's a reason why you married this person in the first place, right? And so, even if at this moment they're not the greatest husband, they're not the greatest wife, look at how they treat look at how they treat their colleagues. Look at how they treat their siblings. Look at how are they good with money? Are they good at taking care of their fitness? Do they smell good? Do they look good? Do they are they diligent at work? Do they work hard for the family? Did they take the garbage out? Did they wash your car? Did they fill up the tank? Did they do the groceries? Did they do the dishes, right? What are some of the things that maybe you have started to overlook because of the state of the marriage that you can now train your brain to start recognizing and acknowledging? Because many times the distance that forms in our marriages is because we feel overlooked, we feel unseen, we feel unheard, we feel like the other person doesn't care about us anymore or see us anymore. And so, going into this 60-second blessing, which is literally just telling them that you see them, I appreciate you, and being specific about the things that they have been doing, it can be a game changer. It can be a game changer. It can really be a game changer, right? The truth of the matter is that many times when we have been so frustrated in our marriages, we start to get very critical, we start to get very self-righteous, right? We feel like the way that we do things is better. We start to try to control or change our spouses, and we say things that are hurtful, to be honest. We Our body language and the things that we say, and this goes both ways, right? And it can start to be like one person says something, the other person says something else, and there's that escalation that we spoke about last week when we talked about communication styles, right? But if you switch things up and start to say positive things about them, and just compliment them and see the things that maybe you haven't seen, you've forgotten about in the past, it can go a very long way. Now, this is one of those ones that can feel really awkward at the beginning, because what they also recommend, remember we talked about the known position. So knee to knee, no distractions, open body language, bring your whole self, and nurturing eye contact. They actually recommend that you do the 60-second blessing in the known position, right? We never did it in the known position. What we tried to do was we would make eye contact, and maybe like as we're hugging, we make eye contact and we're speaking into each other that way. Lately, what we've been doing is voice notes, right? So even though ideally you want to be in the same location, but make it work the way that you want to make it work. Maybe you want to start off with voice notes because that feels less vulnerable for you. And then over time, you go into embracing and speaking into each other. And then over time, you go into the known position, like we talked about, and speaking to each other. But this is one that can really, really go a long way. Now, on page 74, they say that one of the reasons why this works is that it builds emotional safety. And this is something I'm often talking about in my practice. One of the biggest reasons couples drift apart isn't a lack of love. So, really deep down inside, the couple still loves each other. The problem is that there is a lack of emotional safety, right? A lack of emotional safety, meaning that guards are up. I can't trust you with my thoughts. I can't trust you with my feelings. I can't trust you with my emotions, with my dreams, with my aspirations, because I feel like I'm going to get criticized. So I put my guard up, I protect myself. But when we start to compliment each other, when we start to show that, no, I see you and I appreciate you, it starts to bring those guards down. And that is what then allows the connection to repair. Okay. So I will say that the 60-second blessing is one of my favorite habits that they talk about in the book. I'm obviously biased because it's one that we have implemented and has really worked for us. So is that one feeling doable? The 60-second blessing, literally 1 minute a day. 1 minute a day. Is that feeling doable? I'll wait to hear from you as I move on to habit number 5. How are you enjoying this so Are you enjoying this so far? Am I the only one having a party of one over here? Okay, I see some hearts. So thank you. Hopefully it's helpful as well too, because like I said, it's practical. I want you to decide which one of these you're going to implement starting tonight, if possible. So connection time, connection time. Like I said before, we have our weekly marriage business meeting, but connection time is actually technically supposed to be different. For us, for now, we kind of put them together, but we are working on separating them. But connection time is where you actually sit and have fun together. This is where you sit and have fun together. Now, they say that many of us, and I'm guilty of this, don't know how to have fun anymore. We just take ourselves too seriously. We take ourselves too seriously, and that has translated into our marriages. And yes, I know we have so much on our plates. We're worrying about the kids, we're worrying about our careers, we're worrying about our health. Many of us have parents that we're worrying about. We're also worrying about the world and the state of the world. Then you put on finances. Over time, fun now starts to look like, who has time for fun? Who has time to enjoy themselves? But these are the things that are missing in our marriages that are causing the things to start to disintegrate over time. And they say that no matter the state of your marriage, no matter the state of, not of your marriage, but no matter the state of your finances, of your health, you can still make time for fun. In fact, they talked about a time where they were so broke, where they were, I think, $250,000 in debt, but they never lost their ability. They never lost their ability to have fun. They never lost their ability to have fun. Okay, I'm glad that you are all enjoying it. Wonderful, and you're getting value from this. Wonderful. Um, Corey, what do you mean you agree? That's my husband, and he says I agree. You agree to which part exactly, sir? Which part do you agree to? Let us know. So having fun is so important, and this is um, obviously something, like I said, that can be very challenging for us to do. They talk about the reasons why we stopped having fun. Maybe there's unresolved conflict. We're struggling with familiarity. We've entered into our comfort zones, what they call emotional laziness, right? Our schedules are too busy, just like I said. We've lost the ability to play because we just take ourselves too seriously. And maybe we need to overcome some insecurities due to hurt feelings, due to um, insecurities. Maybe we've been criticized in the past for being too playful. Maybe we've been criticized, and maybe there are particular kinds of things that we enjoyed doing and we were laughed at, or we were criticized for doing those things. And that has kind of stifled our ability to have fun. maybe when we tried to have fun, we were we were hurt in the process of trying to have fun, and so it kind of shut down the things in us that made us want to have fun, right? And so all that to say that there are many reasons why we've forgotten how to have fun, but it's important for us to reconnect to that side of us. Right. My husband said, so are you referring to me that I'm always on the serious side? Is it me you're referring to? Are you referring to yourself? Let us know, sir. Let us know. All right. So they also do give tips on how to have fun in your marriage again. They talk about date nights. They talk about don't talk about work, don't talk about kids, and don't talk about money. All right. Like I said, right now, our business meeting kind of doubles as our connection time, but ideally, we're going to work on separating that. So when we have fun, it's usually maybe when grandma is around, right? And we can leave the kids with grandma, but that doesn't happen that often. So we're working on intentionally creating the time where we can actually have fun together beyond talking about our schedules, talking about the finances, talking about all the important stuff, but infusing more fun into our marriage. Yeah, my husband says I think I'm on the serious side. I know I'm serious. I'm working on it though. I'm working on it. One of the tips that they actually share here is to dream with your spouse. Dream with your spouse, and this can be a very fun and connecting activity, talking about one thing you want to do in the future together as a couple. One of the things that I love doing the most as a couple is planning our trips, talking about the future, talking about the kids and things that we can do with the kids. It's always so fun and exciting for me to just pull out the calendar and say, okay, where are we going? What are we doing for the summer? Right. And so that can be really exciting. And then also talking about what's one thing you want to do on your own. So you can dream as a couple, but then also sharing your dreams as individuals as well too. Right. Obviously, there has to be a level of safety. There has to be a level of emotional safety such that you can trust the other person with your dreams. Because in the past, if you have been ridiculed for your dreams, if your dreams have been told, like, well, why would you want to do that? Or that sounds like a silly dream, then of course you're going to shut down and you're going to retreat and be guarded again. So there has to be a measure of safety there in order for you to feel like you want to dream again. So, how is that feeling? Connection time, habit number 5. How is that feeling for you? Is that feeling doable? Connecting, having fun? What are some of the things that might get in the way of connection time and having fun? Again, remembering that that's separate from, or ideally should be separate from, the marriage business meeting. All right. So, the next habit we're going to talk about is leveraging your differences. Leveraging your differences. Now, this one was very eye opening. In fact, this was a very, very eye opening, let me just put it that way, chapter for me. Not like these were not things I didn't know, but to actually hear people talk about it was so important. They talk about some of the differences that we see that are common causes of conflict. Introverts versus extroverts. So when one person is an introvert, the other person is an extrovert, it can cause conflict. When one person is a planner and likes to do things according to a certain way, and the other person is more, let's just go with the flow, more spontaneous, it can cause conflict. When one person likes to be on time and the other person is always late, that can cause conflict. Okay. When someone likes to wake up early, but someone likes to sleep in and goes to bed late at night, so early bird versus night owl, that could cause conflict. Now, of course, marriage, we know that finances is always a big issue, can be a big issue. Someone who is a spender versus a saver, that can cause conflict, right? This was this was a very good chapter. This was a very good chapter because I loved how they explained how we manage conflict and the differences in the way people manage conflict. They talked about people who are fighters, so people who want to address the conflict, discuss it, and resolve it there and then. They want to deal with it head on, versus people who are flighters, so people who tend to be more conflict averse, people who like to withdraw or retreat when there's a conflict. And they did a very good job in explaining the reasons why, when we get emotionally flooded and overwhelmed, why the flighter wants to withdraw. And it's a physiological response, it's an emotional response that many people will have, and it's completely understandable. So, talking about the differences between a thinker versus a feeler, they talked about boundaries with family, they talked about differences in politics, faith and spirituality. That can be a big one. When two people are on different pages when it comes to their faith and their practices, that can be a big one. Differences in parenting, differences in lifestyle. Maybe one person is into fit fam and fitness, and the other person doesn't really care. Even down to music, they talked about people with different music tastes. These are the kinds of things that can cause irreconcilable differences in relationships, not because the music is the actual problem, but because there is a lack of communication and understanding in it. That is, and this is why people fight over toothpaste, right? It's not the toothpaste that's the problem. It's just recognizing that conflict happens, and sometimes we have a hard time repairing the conflict. We have a hard time doing these other things, these other habits that can help overshadow the differences that we have in our relationships. So they go through a very practical approach on what to do when you have these differences. They talk about recognizing that differences are completely normal. They also talk about going through an exercise to rate how important these differences are. Because if one person feels like, okay, my lateness is not an issue, and the other person sees that, no, your lateness is a very big issue, then there needs to be a conversation there, right? Because the person may not even know that the difference is causing a lot of strain, right, in the relationship. So at the end of the day, the point of this chapter is to focus more on what brings you together and less of what divides you, right? And appreciate the differences between the two of you and not see it as a reason why the marriage doesn't work, but actually seeing it as, okay, I might be a planner and you might be more spontaneous. How do we balance the two? How do I communicate with you if I feel like, how do I give you your space if you're an introvert? How do I give you your space without feeling like you are shutting me out? And how, as an introvert, can I communicate that I need space without pushing you away or being dismissive? Right? So they give some really good tips on how we can leverage our differences. How we can leverage our differences. I really enjoyed that chapter. 50-50, yeah, 50-50, getting to a point where we can meet halfway. Exactly. Okay, so we're at a little bit over an hour. I'm going to go quickly through the last three habits. Like I said, I would really highly encourage that you read the book, but I'm hoping that with the conversation that we've had tonight, or what I've shared tonight, at least you've been able to take one or two things that you can start implementing in your marriage, even from tonight. I do want to remind you that when it comes to issues of abandonment, issues of addiction, issues of affairs, and issues of abuse, whether that's emotional, physical, psychological, um, these tips are not going to be enough. That's going to require additional help. However, you can start somewhere. You can definitely start somewhere. Habit number 7, having a code word. Having a code word. Because at the end of the day, you're going to fight. You're going to fight. There's going to be disagreements. There's going to be, you're humans. You're both human beings trying to live together and make life work together. So there will be disagreements. It's not a matter of whether or not you're going to fight, it's a matter of how you fight. How are you fighting? Right? So you're still going to fight, but learn to fight fair. Learn to fight fair. Learn to deal with conflict. Learn to communicate even in the midst of conflict, right? Conflict can be good, especially when we repair it properly. They say here that conflict gives you a chance to express your needs, your desires, and your preferences. We talked about this last week when we discussed communication. Conflict helps you better understand each other's strengths if you listen well, which allows you to lean on each other. Conflict builds intimacy, believe it or not. Conflict motivates you to keep fighting for your marriage. When you resolve a conflict and you actually see, you know what, we're actually stronger together, it motivates you to keep fighting for your marriage, right? And so the code word and the way it works here is that as you are in a disagreement, as you are in conflict, remember we said that that's part of a marriage. If you start to feel like it's entering into an unhealthy territory where we're either calling each other names, where we're hitting below the belt, or one first person feels emotionally overwhelmed or flooded by emotions, you pick a code word. It doesn't have to mean anything. It could be what are the examples that they gave here? It could be pink flamingo, they said, pineapple pizza, Chad needs a walk. It doesn't have to mean anything, right? But we understand that that code word is where we stop, is where we draw the line, right? It's serves as a warning sign to say, I need a timeout or things are going to get bad. I need a timeout before I say something I'm going to regret, right? I need a timeout before things get out of hand. It means I love you enough to stop here because I don't want to say something I'm going to regret, right? So finding a code word that both of you agree that once we say this word, we're getting too close to the line. Now, there has to be a measure of respect that we put to the word. So it's not a word that you use willy-nilly. It's a word that you pull out genuinely when you find that you're going from reasonable conflict and disagreement into unhealthy zone, into combat zone, as they say. So that is habit number 7. Habit number 7, like I want you to like I said, I want you to continue to keep in mind, because we're all going to share which habits we are going to implement as of tonight or tomorrow at the latest. So that was habit number 7. I'll go through all the habits again before we close tonight. Habit number 8, unsolicited apologies. Unsolicited apologies. Now, this is also a really good chapter. And they talk about how first of all, what to apologize for. And they also give a framework, a formula for how to apologize. And remember, I said at the beginning how practical this book is. It's very practical. And they give examples. They give you step 1. I'm sorry for action and feeling. I'm sorry for speaking over you while you were talking today. Instead of, I'm sorry you felt ignored. They'll say that. Another example, I see how that made you feel unheard and frustrated, and I understand why that would be upsetting. Not, I wasn't trying to hurt you. Okay? So they give examples that you can follow, a formula that you can follow on how to apologize. And they also talk about sitting down and writing a list of things that you feel like, you know what, this is something I probably need to apologize for. Okay. So you you give these apologies in a way that is unprovoked. So it could just be on your drive to, or maybe in the kitchen at the end of the day, and you walk up to your spouse and you say, you know what, I'm sorry that I didn't celebrate you when you got that promotion. And I understand how that made you feel unappreciated or dismissed. right? And that promotion could have been 3 years ago, okay? But this is the idea of healing wounds or healing past hurts that is bringing that relationship closer. And you can see that as the habits are progressing, they're getting deeper and deeper and maybe even a little bit harder, right? Going through unsolicited apologies will take a lot of reflection, it'll take a lot of humility as well too, especially if you're on this journey by yourself. Meaning, especially if your spouse is not yet on board with some of these things and you're finding that you are doing the legwork. Okay. Like I said, there's a chapter in the book that specifically talks about how to save your marriage yourself. It is very possible. It is very doable. Is it easy? Absolutely not. But is it possible? Yes, it's possible. So, making those unsolicited apologies, especially when it's not really being received well, you're not really getting the feedback that you want, but still persisting can be very, very hard. But these are the things required. These are the things required. Okay. This was a powerful chapter as well because it talked about an example of someone who came face to face with her son's murderer. And sorry, no, that's the next chapter. I'm getting ahead of myself. So, um, unsolicited apologies. I'm going to read something from the book, and this is the woman, the wife talking, Megan's insight. And she says, I have never once regretted being the bigger and better person in my marriage. It's super tough in the moment, but in hindsight, I'm always glad I did it. I'd rather it be me who apologizes first than sit around and hope Casey, who's her husband, does. I want to own my mistakes, learn from them, make things right, and move on. So that was her experience. You might be a man listening to this and thinking, well, I don't want to be the one apologizing first, but someone has to do it. Someone has to be the bigger person, especially if you're on this call, right? You have no excuses anymore. Now you are aware and you're able to take that first step. Is it easy? No. But is the marriage worth it? Yes. Yes, it is absolutely worth it. Takes a lot of humility, but do you want to pick between your ego or your marriage? Ego, marriage. I offer that you pick your marriage. Okay. All right. Now let us go to habit number 9. Head, hands, heart habit. This was the forgiveness chapter. Now, one thing that they said was that when you apologize for them. But when you forgive for yourself. I thought that that was so profound. It's something that we've heard before, but seeing the apology and the forgiveness chapter back to back, when you apologize for the other person. When you forgive for yourself because you're letting go of resentment, you're letting go of bitterness, you're letting go of all the things that are keeping you from moving forward in your marriage, right? And so this was another really, really insightful chapter. Um, yeah, I'm gonna let you read that chapter because again, as you've noticed, we've gone from easy to hard, right? Easy to hard. And the last habit is the I don't know if you guys have your kids there. I don't know if you're using your earbuds, but it's the intimacy talk. They don't use the word intimacy, they use a synonym for that, but I'm just trying to be respectful. The intimacy talk, right? And what I found so fascinating about this particular habit is that they talk about, and this is so true, they're not the first persons to have said it, is that when you do those other 9 habits, right? And you may not even have to do all those other 9 habits. This particular one somehow resolves itself. So if you find yourself that you are in a marriage where there is hardly any intimacy, where you feel emotionally distant, where you don't feel like you're in love with your husband or your wife anymore, where you feel like there's just you're no attraction anymore. By the time you go through, what were the other 9 habits again? The known position. right? And connecting that way, communicating that way. By the time you go to the weekly marriage business meeting where you're checking in every week, where you're asking each other, how can I support you? Where you are, scheduling intimacy, right? By the time you have your love list and you're intentional about treating each other to individual things every week, by the time you give each other the 60-second blessing, and you have fun together in your connection time, and you learn to accept each other for your differences, and you learn to fight fairly using things like the code word, you learn to apologize and own your mistakes, and you learn to forgive magically. The intimacy part, the physical intimacy part, is going to take care of itself. It's going to take care of itself. I mean, they still do have very interesting, um, insightful things that we can do as far as, things that affect our intimacy, things that affect our feelings, talking about our feelings, having conversations about intimacy. But the truth of the matter, even if you just did the 60-second blessing, that can go a long way, right? So I'm well aware of our time. I didn't anticipate that we were going to spend this long, but I do want to hear from you. Of the 10 habits we've talked, and like I said, the last chapter goes into detail on how to save your marriage by yourself, because the author of the book, the wife in the co-author, one of the co-authors, she went through the process of saving her marriage herself at the beginning. She went to therapy. Her husband didn't want to go. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but all that to say that it is possible to save your marriage by yourself. The exemptions being abuse, affairs, addictions, and abandonment. Abuse, affairs, addictions, and abandonment. But for the run of the mill irreconcilable differences, we've grown apart, we're not connected anymore, we've fallen out of love, the things that affect regular everyday marriages, these 10 habits, even if you pick one or two, can go a very, very, very long way. They can go a very long way. I do appreciate you all sticking through the live tonight. I have really enjoyed reading this book and sharing about this book, because I think that strongly believe that if the things in this book are implemented, it can go a very long way in fixing some of the things that are wrong with our relationships. I want to hear from you now. What stood out to you the most? What stood out to you the most in this conversation tonight? Of all the habits that we discussed tonight, of all the 10 habits that we discussed tonight, what stood out to you the most? And also, which habits feel like they are going to be easy for you to implement? Which habits feel like they're going to be hard for you to implement? Like I said, at the end of the day, trying to create a better marriage starts with us. We can't control what our spouses do, what our spouses don't do. But we can control how we show up. We can control how we feel. We can control how we respond, right? It is a growth process, because to create a better marriage, you have to create a better you. And sometimes you have to do it by yourself, right? Sometimes the other party is not, and it can take years. It can take years for the other party to get on board. But you have to decide, like, what are you willing to do? And what are you willing to take? Fumi said the 60 seconds blessing. Honestly, that was one thing that made a big difference for us, for sure. My husband is on here, and so I'm sure he can let you know if I'm making things up, if I'm lying. But I think we started about 2 years ago. We made it pretty consistent, and it made a big difference. We have definitely fallen out of the habit, but now we're trying to use voice notes, which is nice to get those voice notes during the day. Although today he was complaining that my voice note was Or are you saying that my voice note was too short or it didn't address some of the things that you wanted me to address? But that is a good one. It's a good one to start. Which one feels hard? Which one feels like it will be a hard one to do? Which one feels like it will be a hard one to do? I think for us, it's definitely that fun one, the connection one, and trying to have more fun because we're just so busy. The nice thing is that last week we actually had a babysitter come and stay with the kids. The kids were off school. I was working from home, so we had a babysitter come and stay with the kids, and hopefully she'll be able to come so that we can go and have fun from time to time. Hi, Toby. Toby says the 60-second confession, being intentional, that might be a whole work for the sake of consistency. Yeah. It's going to take intentionality. You might want to set alarms on your phone. Like I said, you might want to do the voice note thing to start off with and over time build up to face to face. But I agree that one definitely takes intentionality and consistency. For me, I want to try the love list. That's the next one that I really want us to try is I write my love list, my husband writes his love list, and we take the time to actually treat each other to the things that we've written down on our love list. So that way he's not guessing what I like and I'm not guessing. You would think that after how many years together, almost 20 years together, that we would know, but it doesn't work that way. You have to be intentional, right? About communicating. So, what are the things that I like? What are the things he likes? And actually taking the time at least every week or every other week to do something nice for each other so that we know that, okay, um, I see you and I appreciate you, and I'm letting you know that I love you in a way that makes sense to you, not just in a way that's simply convenient for me, of course, within reason. Nobody's asking anybody to buy them a new car or a new house or anything like that within reason, right? And it's going to take conversations, right? They give some examples of how to make your love list reasonable so that it's not burdensome for your spouse as well too, because if it's too burdensome, that's also going to affect the level of consistency too. All right, everyone, especially for those on the East Coast, I really appreciate you spending your Monday night with me. If you're catching the replay, thank you so much for watching the replay. I want to say thank you, everyone, for joining me tonight. Next week, we're going to be talking about boundaries. Boundaries is a word that has been thrown around a lot, but next week, we're going to be talking about 6 types of boundaries that everybody should have. 6 types of boundaries that every woman should have, but also applies to men too. So 6 types of boundaries that we should have. That's going to be our topic for next week. So mark your calendar, set your alarms. And if you want to pick up the book, definitely pick up the book. Once again, it's called The Marriage Habit: 10 Simple Practices to Build a More Intentional, Thriving Relationship. It's a really good one, practical, easy to read, simple to apply, not easy, but very simple to apply, simple to understand. Okay. All right. Thank you all so much. Pussy, I owe you a call. I owe you more than a call, actually. There are many people here that I owe calls. I see all of you. I appreciate all of you. And I wish you all thriving, happy marriages and a good night. Bye.